I'm Kahja Elliott, and I'm a food enthusiast. Bronx born and raised, ATL made, Bay Area becoming. And I talk to people about how they create community through food in the Bay and beyond. Welcome to the As Told By podcast. All right, we are back with this week's episode of the As Told By podcast. Y'all know I love all my episodes, but today is going to be especially fun. My guest is an award-winning host, author, and nationally recognized wine expert and educator. She's known for making wine and food approachable, entertaining, and fun. She's been named one of the top 100 most influential people in the American wine business. She's also a two-time Taste Award winner who also received multiple Daytime Emmy nominations for her hosting on the much-loved and watched KQED series, Check Please Bay Area. Welcome, Leslie Sbrocco, to the As Told By podcast.
Hello, Kahja. It's so good to see you.
You too. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, I am thrilled, and I'm excited to talk to you.
Yes, I'm trying not to fan out because I'm a big fan of you and the show and what you do.
Oh, thank you. Well, don't worry. We now have, and we'll talk about Check Please, I know, but we're entering our 21st season of the show. Yes. And I now have, guests on the show that are 25, whatever. Uh-huh. And they come in and they go, oh my God, I can't believe I'm meeting you. I've watched you my whole life.
It's a whole life moment, especially if you're from the Bay. You're like, right. Okay,
my whole life.
I know this.
I know. It's so funny. I'm thinking, I think that's a compliment. So.
It is a compliment. Trust me, it is. I'm sitting here with you in Petaluma. I think this is such a unique town. I was saying to you before we started, as I drove up and I saw, a lot of alluding to dairy, and there's very much a small town feel as I spent some time this morning in the downtown area. Tell me, in your opinion, what is special about Petaluma?
I think you nailed it right there. It is a small town feel, and when we moved here decades ago, mm-hmm. It was much smaller town feel, right? It's an historic downtown, mm-hmm. And was the capital of eggs and dairy for quite a number of years in the past. And we still carry, I think, that agricultural feel here in Petaluma. You just go maybe a mile out of town and you're in the rolling hills, mm-hmm. headed to the Pacific Ocean. You can just cross the Marin border as you get out towards the ocean. And it really is this bucolic, again, focused on, you see cows everywhere. There's such a dairy focus here. Mm-hmm. We have ice cream producers and cheese producers. And I think that's the feel you get when you walk downtown Petaluma. You see historic buildings. And we're becoming quite the hot spot. I mean, mm-hmm. There's so many terrific restaurants now. And I think little Petaluma has grown up, and we are now in the limelight.
I love it. I was telling you, I planned a whole Petaluma day. I'm going to go do touring an olive oil farm after that.
Absolutely.
After this, I have a dinner reservation tonight, so I'm like, make a day of it.
And you can totally do that here. And there's so many things to do. And even downtown Petaluma now has winery tasting rooms, mm-hmm. some winery tasting rooms, a spirits tasting room, mm-hmm. Plenty of places you can taste ice cream and cheese and all of that. So It is a wonderful spot to come visit.
Okay. Well, you're a longtime Petaluma resident, but you are originally from Chicago, which is another amazing food city. So I always like to ask people, what kind of food family do you come from?
That's a great question. Yes, I grew up in Chicago, born in Colorado, grew up in Chicago. And I come from a family of 5 kids. Mm-hmm. We lived in what was then far away from downtown, about 45-minute drive, mm-hmm. out into an area called Barrington, Crystal Lake, Cary. Sort of, again, there was the Fox River running through, beautiful bucolic towns, and people had big homes, and it was just a very far suburban feel mm-hmm. To Chicago. And my father was an airline pilot. A lot of pilots lived in this area because it was a shorter drive to O'Hare mm-hmm. Airport. And so I grew up in a pretty beautiful spot.
Did you grow up cooking? Did you come from a household where people were like throwing down on Sunday dinners? or was it just like functional food experience? Like for me as a latchkey kid, right? You know, there's a lot of experimentation in the kitchen, and my mom was working, so we weren't like throwing down for dinners, and we would go to my grandmother's for holidays. What was your experience with?
You know, with 5 kids, and my father being an airline pilot who was gone a lot, my mother was a stay-at-home mom, and she spent a lot of time cooking and cleaning. And yes, food was very important to us. She, I just, you know, you have those family recipes that you absolutely love and request, right? Her Yorkshire pudding is just, you know, roast beef and Yorkshire pudding, amazing. You know, she makes red velvet cake, and has since I was a little kid, and that's what we get on our birthday is red velvet cake. And so, yes, we were definitely into food. And my father being a pilot, as I've mentioned, we traveled a lot, which is an interesting, I have continued this love of travel my entire life, and my kids have it now too. So, you know, traveling was part of our family dynamic as well. And my parents would load us up, you know, being in Chicago, we'd go to Hawaii. You know, I have pictures of me singing Mele Kalikimaka and, you know, during Christmas time. And then we'd get a chance to go over to Europe, and, you know, because it didn't cost anything, right? Yeah. You know, they could pack us into one. This is where I learned my packing skills as well through my mom. You know, she'd pack 5 kids in one suitcase. Let's go.
Oh, that's a skill.
Yeah, that's a skill that I have learned and taken with me and passed along again. So I think being, you know, traveling, especially as a kid, getting the opportunity to travel, you know, shaped my life. And I think when you travel, you get a 360 view of the world, right?
Yeah.
You really see other cultures, you see other foods, you see other people, and have these experiences, and it just widens your knowledge and your sense of the world. So I was very lucky to have that growing up.
Yeah.
And you know, I think when unfortunately, there's not a focus on travel either for money reasons or whatever. Again, you might look at the world with a little narrower, you know, viewpoint than you do when you get out and you spend time in the world.
I can see that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm laughing thinking of one of my really good friends, and she has a daughter who's 8, and the child has so many passport stamps.
Yeah.
It's just so interesting, right?
That's
that
great.
Nowadays, many kids just have a level of access.
Absolutely.
That we all didn't, even from a food perspective. I think I've shared on other episodes, going into some of these really nice high-end restaurants and seeing little kids in there dining, and I'm like, it's a good life, isn't it?
Well, I got to tell you that Check Please, we had a season that was about kids. We had Check Please Kids.
Yes.
And they were anywhere from about 9 years old to about 13, you know, preteen. When we had auditions, we had 300 kids come into the studio, flood the studio for auditions. And we narrowed it down to, you know, 3 on each show. But I'm telling you, the level of knowledge and passion these kids had blew the adults away. And we didn't have to worry about them getting drunk on the set, you know, if they're drinking. But they're I mean, this one little girl was so cute. She couldn't even, sitting in the chair, their feet, of course, don't touch the ground. So
Right.
we had apple boxes, you know, as footstools for them. And I said, now, what's your favorite place? And she said, she had a little lisp. Oh, I love Pearl Wine Bar. And I'm like, Pearl Wine Bar? She goes, oh, that caviar cart? And I'm thinking, oh my goodness.
My gosh.
They were just so smart and so articulate. And I think that's particular to the Bay Area for a lot of reasons. But also, just as you said, the access now, the availability of being able to see other things and other places and try different things. You know, hopefully that's rooted early on in people so that they can, you know, expand their worldview. And I think we get that here as a benefit in the Bay Area.
Absolutely. In my research, and correct me if I'm wrong, I read that you were originally going to be an attorney.
I was.
Wow. How did you go from attorney to broadcasting and wine?
I was always involved. Being the second youngest of 5, I was very involved in not only theater. We were all theater kids. My mom painted all of the school sets. We had a very big high school that was known for theater programs. Nice. So was always involved in theater and was expected as a Hartley to be in the theater, groups by the time they got to me. And I was also super involved in student government. I loved, I was class president and vice president of the organization for the state, for high school.
I love this.
Yeah. So I was really into student government. And I don't know where it came from, but I was pretty clear early on that I wanted to be a senator. And I think in the back of my mind, there was somewhere, thinking, do you want to be president? And then pretty soon I thought, maybe not president, but senator. I think I'd be a great senator. And let me just tell you right now, I'm so thankful I'm not in politics. There's not enough wine in the world to have me
you
be
are
in
right
politics.
about that.
So that was really what I set out to do. And I'm pretty focused and hardworking. And, I thought, for sure, I've figured it out. That's what I'm going to do. And I went to college my first year. I graduated with honors high school and, got those wonderful things you did in the high school yearbook. I don't know if they still do them, I was most likely to succeed.
Well, you did that.
I think I was just it was so funny because my sister always joked. She said, "You wore business suits to school." I was like, I think I did. So pretty nerdy. And I just thought, I'm going to do that. So I went to Boston University my first year. My father had passed away I was only 12 at a young age. He was only 46. I'll talk a little bit more about that because that's played a big role in my life as well. So my mother was a single mom to 5 kids, and she was 40.
Wow.
And so, all of us got scholarships. All of us, have, and some of, not me, but have advanced degrees. And education was incredibly important. But again, we were looking for scholarships, and I got a full ride to BU, and I spent my first year in Boston, and I loved it there. I loved the program. I was in the political science program, and but it was a very urban campus.
Okay.
And I wanted something a little bit more like a college feel, right? Yeah. And being from Chicago, I can actually say that the weather is worse in Boston.
I don't know either to be true, but I'm going to take your word for it.
So anyway, so I went to Boston and transferred then to Washington University in St. Louis. We had sweatshirts that said, "Harvard is the WashU of the East," So a really traditional sort of campus, beautiful place. And got a degree in political science and economics. And I thought I was going to head to law school and go from there. And it just so happens I met somebody and we got engaged, and he was from the Bay Area. So we moved out here back to the Bay Area, and I had a panic. I sort of panicked. He was a dental orthodontic student, so he had his own practice set up, and I just was young and afraid that I didn't want to be a lawyer. I had that existential crisis at 21 or whatever, 22.
Like, maybe I don't
want to be a lawyer. Out in the real world, no, I don't know. So I just sort of panicked, and I started to do other things. At that point, we were split up, but I was in the Bay Area just exploring at that point, and had worked at a law firm, and I really decided that I didn't want to be a lawyer.
Yeah, some practical experience.
Yeah, I did. And so I followed my passion. First, thing I tend to do that, and luckily, again, with one of those things we pass down to our kids is really try to think what you love doing. What is it that you love, and can you clarify that? Can you to turn it into an actionable item? And so I'm a list person. I wrote down what I was good at and what I knew how to do, versus what I wanted to do, and saw where things crossed. And I was getting into wine just as it was a different time then. I was a consumer. We didn't have all these programs like sommelier teachings, and I didn't WSET and all these things that are accessible now to learn about wine, and even everything you can learn on the internet. So I was just doing it by going out to wineries and just falling in love and volunteering for Harvest, and I decided I really love wine, and I took it after a couple of years to the next level of how can I get paid to drink wine. Right? Let me solve this. And I figured again, I had that list in front of me going, what I'm good at is talking, speaking in public. What I'm good at is researching and writing. You learn how to write if you're a political science major.
Okay.
And so those were the sort of things that I said, okay, I'm really comfortable and good at these things. Has nothing to do with wine, but look, there's people that write about wine. They happen to be white men over 60 when I started, that worked at newspapers and wrote books about wine and things like that. The very uncommon female that was in that group. But I'm like, those people can do it. Of course I can do this.
I could go in and break that up.
I could do it. And so I just sort of, I started writing for a small newspaper on the peninsula. I had some on-camera experience.
Okay.
I was believe it or not, hand model.
Oh, for who? Listen.
So that was
good work if you can get it.
That was my day job. Looking at him now, it's unbelievable. But that was my day job, and paying the bills so I could drink wine and learn about wine.
Oh, that's fun.
So I worked for. I had an agent who looked. I met an agent at a party, and again, I'm 23 or something years old. I've never been a model or anything, but she looked at my hands. She said, "You have gorgeous hands. Have you ever thought about being a hand model?" I said, "Never in my wildest dreams have I thought about that." And but do I get paid?
Right. The real question.
Yeah, do I get paid? And I was the one that poked the Pillsbury Doughboy for a number of years.
Are you serious?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
I did all these catalogs. I did, Sharper image catalogs and all these. And I never wanted to be an actress or anything. I didn't want to move to LA. I was a hand model.
I love this.
Isn't that hilarious?
This is so
my road, I'm actually making sort of a graphic with my finger of a long and winding yellow brick road. It took me a lot to figure out what was necessary. But I always followed, what do I want to do? What do I love doing?
Yeah.
That was my question, and that was my driving force.
And you're not, as you mentioned, sommelier, that is not the road you went down. How long did it take you to amass this knowledge of the wine space?
Well, I think in order to know wine and food, you have to do, right? I can't answer the question of what do you like about wine, without having tasted it and had so many experiences with wine. Because for me, as you said in your open, I like to make wine fun. It's entertainment. It's just wine. It's fermented grape juice, right? But there's so much history and so much storytelling to go on with wine and food. And that was what I really loved about that piece of it, was getting my hands dirty and digging in. Yeah, there was no path at that point to really becoming a sommelier. You came from food or something else. And I didn't even think about it, It wasn't as available as it is now to learn about it and to experience it, unless you moved your way up in a restaurant and became, a sommelier or wine buyer. And so I wasn't involved in that sort of restaurant piece of wine. I was approaching it more from I knew I could write, I knew I could, and just being a persistent thing that I am, I was knocking on doors like, "Hey, do you guys need somebody to write about wine?" And they're like, "What?" Anyway, so I just sort of created my own doors for the very beginning of my career, really knocking and saying, "I love to do this," and
let me do it.
Yeah, let me do it. And I had wonderful opportunities and wonderful, talking about kind of mentors, or I say more people who gave me a chance.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't come in with a wine degree. I didn't come in with, as a production or wine making piece of it. I knew that wasn't for me. I've tried it. I've done it. Knew it wasn't for me. It was really about telling the story. And that's how I narrowed my focus and kind of created my own job. Nobody has my job in the world,
No, it's so, you're so right about that. It's such a carve out.
Yeah.
What you do.
And I've pieced together things that I love doing. And so essentially I was writing for these small papers, and then I got, just being in kind of a wine lovers community of people. And I had one guy say to me, "Hey, Leslie," he was a music magazine publisher, call out to Peter Hirschfeld. And he said, "I just got hired by Microsoft to create these online city guides called Sidewalk. And I know you love wine. I know you know a lot about wine." Which I would say I didn't know a ton at that point, but I had the passion and more than most people. But
yeah.
And he brought me in as what we called the wine producer in Microsoft's first online kind of content project, City Guides. And I learned on the job, man, how to build a website. I mean, I wasn't the technical person, but how I got to go and create this whole idea of what a wine section would look like. And I got to go visit producers, and I got to, and that led to actually another wonderful guy, Jeff Moriarty, who I was again in kind of a grouping with. Again, it's who you know, baby. It's who you know in every business. Yes. And Jeff said, Leslie, I'm working at the Santa Rosa Press-Democrat, and he owned by the New York Times Company. And he said, the Times wants to do because a lot of websites were popping up then, a lot of, internet was getting attention then. And he said, you're the only person I know that has like wine experience and internet or, anything with websites. And he said, would you come and create this property with me for Santa Rosa Press-Democrat? And then it became part of the New York Times. Oh. And I said, hell yeah,
just falling into opportunities.
Fake it till you make it, baby. Fake it till you make it. And, it was really about following my passion, meeting the people that were like me, and having pushed to get doors open. Yeah. And then somebody peeped in and said, hey, come here, and help me out with this. And we created what was then called winetoday.com, a daily wonderful sort of online newspaper about wine. We built huge databases. It was fabulous. We even did something called Harvest Cam, but nobody had the bandwidth to watch it.
Y'all have done it all.
We did. It was unbelievable. And I had teams in New Zealand and London and France, and it was again one of those things. Just jump in, And if you don't
roll up your sleeves,
if you don't have butterflies in your stomach, you're not pushing yourself hard enough, right?
Okay. Well, we're going to take that.
Yeah,
we're going to take that.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll end with the New York Times because I could ramble on and on. So I helped build winetoday.com and run it until the internet implosion, and then I took it and wrote my first book, and it's a whole nother chapter after that. So
yeah. So let's talk about the books, because you did write to Wine for Women and the Simple and Savvy Wine Guide, which are both focused on accessibility and making wine feel approachable, which is interesting because now that's just a given, right? Wine feels very approachable.
It wasn't when I started, man. It wasn't. And I'll tell you, I would show up at wineries, a young, I would still qualify myself as young then, young woman, and people would look at me like, "What? Who are you? You're not a wine writer. Right. What are you? What is this?" And what is the internet, by the way? That sort of the wine business was definitely slow to adopt. Okay. And so it was really uncommon for somebody like me to be going to wineries and to be creating all these things, and I think that helped me gain an advantage by creating my own niche right there. Yeah. And I became acceptable, and I had the moniker of the New York Times behind me, right?
So that helped. A good old name brand behind
so that you. Helped. So that sort of led me into the wine business, and I knew I was breaking barriers at that point because we had women like Jancis Robinson in London, and it was all very academic, and she's wonderful, and being young and being talking about wines on the internet was crazy. And so, now it's so incredible because we have such diversity. We have so many different outlets, and platforms that people can use. And whether it's TikTok or Instagram or whatever, I'm so happy to see it's blossomed into this amazing group of people, very diverse people now who are writing about wine.
Locks
and food
off the door,
and
all the things. Your time and your expertise in wine, if I understand this correctly, eventually led you to do an online show, which is where they saw you, and the conversation started about you potentially being considered as a host for Check Please Bay Area.
Absolutely. So I again go back to that list. What am I good at? What am I good at? And I was good at theater in high school. I was good at talking, and so I got asked to do a few TV segments here and there in the Bay Area once I got started. And CBS TV had kind of the CBS station here in the Bay Area asked me to do a wine minute because I had met the producer at a wine, again, that shared common passion and love for things is, and I've got this opportunity for you. And so I did 1 minute wine tips for CBS TV. And that is where, and they had an online portion too, but that is where the producer of what became Check Please. It started in Chicago, and it came to the Bay Area, and PBS, KQED, kind of licensed that format.
Yes.
And they apparently had interviewed a lot of people, whether it was just hosts or chefs or whatever. I was one of the last people they asked to audition. And so I remember just sitting in a big studio at KQED and they were asking me questions, and, I'm just rambling on, talking, doing what I do, and got a call the next day, you're hired.
The next day?
The next day.
You are saying so many things that I want to just parallel park on for a minute. The wine minute, right?
Yeah.
Like, you just don't need to always be doing these huge, elaborate things, because if something is meant to find you, all you needed was that minute.
Absolutely. And in that minute, I became very good at writing short, quippy things, which again, that came from my experience at Microsoft, where I would write short blurbs about, wines in the wineries. And I love a good edit. I just would edit myself until other people could edit me.
Yeah.
And so, it's challenging to do a 1 minute. And I do the Today Show, right? I've done it for 10 years, 15 years. Even longer, I think. And so, you get 3 minutes to do 6 wines.
Okay.
So I'm used to speed and jamming in information where I can with a smile on my face. So you don't need to, you can, that's the beauty of wine. You can dig as deep as you want in food, into the background, the history, the culture, all of that. But that doesn't have to come out. All of that stuff doesn't have to come out, right? You can just say this is a wonderful porch pounder. You see yourself sitting in the sun, on your front porch with your neighbors, drinking this and having some, and that's the beauty of rosé. Yes. Boom, something like that.
There's your minute.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a bit about Check Please Bay Area. So started in 2005. So you all recently celebrated 20 years, now going into year 21. It is the longest continuously running iteration of the franchise, and you are the longest continuous host within the franchise.
Exactly.
Which is great.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
When you say 20 years for a TV show, that is pretty astounding.
It's a long time.
It's a long time, and there are few shows that can be, can say that.
Yes.
And so I'm very, very proud of that. And it's always been because of the excellent teamwork that we have. And, I'm the host, I'm the face of the show, but there are so many wonderful people behind it.
Yes.
And they've changed over the years. Actually, I'm the keeper of the Emmy Awards. So if you look up here, I've got more.
There they are.
I've got 2 more upstairs in bathrooms, I think. We've got 4 Emmys. I'm their historian, basically, since I've been there the longest. So when we're asking questions about the past of Check Please, I'm like, I'm the historian.
Yes.
So it is a wonderful concept and a just wonderful show. And I say that with gratitude to the people who watch us, the viewers, to the sponsors who sponsor us and have believed in us for years, and to the PBS team.
Yeah. So we have listenership for this podcast in different areas of the country. So if you are listening and you are not familiar, let me just give you a quick rundown with what it is. Here's the premise of the show. You have 3 diners. They each recommend their favorite restaurants, and then each diner visits the other 2 restaurants, and then the group returns to discuss their experiences on camera.
Exactly. Yes. And I am the host, kind of moderating the dinner party, if you will.
That you are. Now, you mentioned production, and shout out to Lori Halloran.
Oh, we love Lori.
Yeah.
Our producer
who does a great job with the show. Tell me a bit about how the guest experience is designed, because people come to this after having watched the show for years and now they're here in the studio. What do you want them to experience or feel while they're there?
Well, it's so interesting because it has changed over the years. And we've changed producers. My longtime producer, who I've worked with since the beginning of the show, Tina Salter, left, and then we had an interim producer, and then got Lori. So we had a little bit more constraints at the beginning under Tina's reign. It wasn't her, doing, but there were more budgetary constraints, and it was a new show, right? A new concept, and so we would shoot 2 to 3 shows in a day, which was crazy. But so we didn't on certain parts of the evolution of Check Please. We've had different viewer experiences and guest experiences. Okay. But the goal is always to make it comfortable and fun. And as I say to the guests once they get on the set, I said, our role here is to make you all look good. The number one thing I want is fun, right? We are just 3 people around a table, well, 4 with me, talking about something we're passionate about food and drinks. And that's all I want from you. And if I do my job well, which is making people comfortable on the set, then that's what we get. We get these wonderful expressions and people really relax into it and we have fun. Right, that's been a theme throughout my career and everything I do. Let's have a good time. Let's yes, we can. I call myself an edutainer, right?
Oh,
educate and entertain.
Okay, I mean, it really is a fun show. In the spirit of keeping it fun, how do y'all avoid making it feel overproduced? Because you can't allow people to go completely off the rails. You want to keep some spontaneity, so there's like a fine line you have to find to like keep enough order for it to be a production, but just a little loose enough for everybody to have a good time.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a great question because I think people come in and inevitably they get nervous, right? They're either their first time on television or, and so my job is they come into the green room. And we've had different green rooms over the years. But one of them, our longest running green room, was all the guests would come in and sign in on the walls. We had the walls all covered in signatures, and it was great.
Okay.
We actually saved a piece when they kind of renovated the building. We saved a piece of the wall. And so, they'd come in, we'd relax, we'd give them a glass of wine if they wanted. Now, mind you, the show started at 10 a.m. when we get to the green room. So we have other options for them as well. But,
okay.
So, just relax in the green room. The only regulation is they can't talk to each other about their own restaurant. We keep that for the set.
Yes.
So talking about spontaneity, I don't want them to have talked to each other. They don't know. It's all anonymous. So they don't know who's gone where and what the restaurant is and all that. So that's the hard, fast rule is do not talk about that. Anything else you can talk about. And so I meet them in the green room and then they get out on the set, they get mic'd up and there's this tension kind of, with every group because there's cameras all around and now they're unmanned cameras, but still people on the set. And now it's a green screen. Before it was a full set. But so my job is to get in there and shake them up and say, hey, you guys, okay, let's do some exercises. Let's have some fun. Let's have a sip of wine if you have one in your glass. And really just say, don't pay attention to any of those cameras over there. Don't even, look at it. And there's one point they do and welcome themselves. But overall, it's like we're together sitting at a table and they're peeking in.
We're just talking.
Yeah, we're just talking.
Yeah.
And honestly, I've not had one show in the history of the shows where after the first we do 3 restaurants, right? So after the first, maybe I've had a few that takes them to the second one to get in. They forget the camera's there. They're just talking to one another. The only thing that's scripted is my intros and outros. Like, hi, I'm Leslie Sbrocco. Welcome to Check Please Bay Area. And then here's the address and then a big blank on the teleprompter. And then that's conversation. And then I wrap it up by saying, if you want to try, right? I go back to teleprompter. That's it. That's all the scripted. The open, the close, nothing else.
And that's it.
Yep. And so it's live, essentially what we call live to tape, which if people mess up, they can go back and fix it and we can edit it out and things like that. But what you see is what we're saying on set.
That's what it is. I will tell you, so I actually was fortunate to be on an episode of Check Please. I want to say it was 2023 or 24. I can't recall, but like in that 2023, 2024.
And did you do Street Social?
I did do Street Social, which I'm going to tonight.
Great. In my little town of Petaluma.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. No, I think I was because I knew you were on early, closer to where we are now.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And again, we've had, think about that, 16 shows in a season, 3 people on each show, 3 restaurants on each show. We're into close to 1,000 people and, that have been on the show. So, and I know when you walked in, I'm like, oh yeah. So it had to be recent, right? So
it was a great, I will tell you, okay, as a person coming to the show as a guest, it was such a great experience. And I think because I had watched it so much, I wasn't nervous until you said your scripted part. And I was like, oh my gosh, she did it just like she did on TV. And that's when I became aware, oh, this is a production. I think in that moment, but to your point, as we talked, and I felt like I had really good two other guests that were on with me, and we had so much fun. And
what were the other restaurants on that show? I'm trying to remember.
It was Roasted and Raw, which was in Oakland, which unfortunately is not currently operating. And then it was, I believe it's pronounced Kehlani's Cafe, which was in Vallejo.
In Vallejo. That's right. I remember that show.
And then, of course, Street Social. And so I felt like they all were such different restaurants from each other. So we had like a fast casual experience. We had Street Social, which is a little bit more upscale. So I loved our episode.
And that's kind of what, the producers do that. They get so many applications and they really try to the application process. And they really try to put people together with different restaurants, disparate restaurants that showcase the Bay Area. So that's the talent of the production team, Cecilia and Candace and of course Lori. And so, it's such fun. Right? It's fun. Once you get into it, it's so really fun.
And I have to say, my past work as a mystery shopper prepared me for, what is required. Because when you go to the restaurant, the show isn't filming. So you are just there as a diner. The restaurant doesn't know you are there.
It's all anonymous.
Dining. So, I'm taking my little covert notes in my phone and, but you're noting because in the application, you have to go back and write in detail about your experience on the show. So putting all those things together and then being a part of this thing that I had watched so many times at home, it just was so much fun.
And I look so much prettier in person, right?
Listen, you always wear the jewel tones, and I'm like, Leslie got this thing laid down, y'all.
Well, now with the green screen, I can't wear any green. So I have to do just kind of a solid color. Yeah.
Okay. No green and no patterns and all that.
No patterns. Yep.
Okay. Well, listen, you mentioned Check Please Bay Area is not the only show you've hosted because in 2013, you hosted 100 Days, Drinks, Dishes, and Destinations, which was a little bit more of a limited series, but it extended way beyond the Bay. It included international exploration of food and wine in a different way than Check Please does. So talk about how this came about and what led you to do an additional show in the middle of doing this show.
Well, I think, and actually we started the concept for 100 Days, Drinks, Dishes, and Destinations started around 2013, 2014, and we didn't debut the show until 2020, March of 2020.
Oh, that's a long runway.
Yeah, because remember I was shooting the show. I was writing books. I was, writing articles. I do a lot of speaking. And so internationally, I was doing a lot of speaking and nationally about wine, about kind of, as I said, building your career, finding your passion. So I did a lot of travel and a lot of speaking and a lot of movement in those years. And everybody would say, not everybody, people would come up and say, how can I go with you on one of these trips? I want to just go back. I'll carry your bags. I'll do your hair. Can I come with you? And, repeatedly people would say that, right? Can I come with you? You really are as fun in person as you are on the show, right? And so I do gonzo traveling. In those days, it was like, phew, man, I'm in. I do my gig, I'm out, or I'm exploring, or I'm tasting, or I'm eating at a restaurant. And so bubbling around in my head was this, how do I bring people along with me for a 3 or 4 day jaunt to someplace, because I am on the go. And so, and Tina, my previous producer before Lori, we just would always talk about this. And I said, you know what, let's get this going. And in 2019, the end of 2018, 2019, gathered the money. It's an LJS Productions. And I was working with KQED, but it was not a KQED production. It was my own. And so sort of sketched out shows that I thought, places that I've been that were very personal to me. Like we went, one episode, one of my favorites is my sister lives in Normandy, France. And so we went to Normandy and stayed in her big house and talked about cider and showed how to milk the cows for camembert cheese and, all this beautiful local, went to the beaches at Etretat and D-Day beaches and things like that. It was a very personal show to me. And I think that's what attracted people to the concept and to the show, was that it was really about my journeys, and I was figuring out how to bring those people along with me. Come with me for 4 days. And that's where we got started. And so places like Nashville, which is a blast, right? And I have friends in Nashville and have been in Asheville, North Carolina. The beer scene is fantastic. We were at the Biltmore Hotel, which is this classic, American classic.
So they do the
place.
whole Christmas thing.
Yeah, it's beautiful, beautiful. And again, when I talk about sort of gonzo shooting, I mean, I bring 2 shooters or 2 cameramen with me. Actually haven't had a camera woman yet with me.
Okay.
That's to do for the next set.
Coming along. Okay.
And so, and then my producer, and we'd hire a local to help, coordinate and be sort of a mini producer. Yeah, a local producer. But that's it. I mean, they'd mic me up during the morning, no hair and makeup for me. And we'd just go, right? It was shot when I say live to tape for Check Please, what I was filming was live to tape. I mean, it was just my experiences. And the beauty of that is if we left, I always said, okay, crew, we want to do the pre-production, know where we're going, have the general outline, do all our research, get the permits, do whatever to shoot. And then I want to leave moments for magic. Just incredible moments. And I'll tell you about one of them because each show has a special glimmer moment, that was not planned and was not,
it's not scripted.
Not scripted, not planned. Well, the show wasn't scripted, really. It was just, here was the points we were going to go to and did the research on that. But we were in Guadalajara, Mexico. Gorgeous city, gorgeous. Okay. And just outside, maybe a 45-minute drive, hour, not even quite an hour drive, you are in the town of Tequila. And tequila is, yes, a drink, but also an ancient volcanic mountain. Okay. So, and that beautiful black lava creates the soil for the agave plants to grow. And so tequila is a place, a town. So we were going there, and I'm a tequila lover, and we were going there, and we were about halfway out there, so the outskirts of Guadalajara, getting into more rural land. And right on the side of the road was a shack sort of set up, and there was a family in front. It looked like a husband and a wife and maybe a teenager. And there was a line of people behind it, and there were some cows tied up. And I remember asking the bus driver, what's going on? And he said, oh, that's called a pajarete, particular to this area. So you get coffee ground, you get an earthen mug, coffee grounds in the mug. Okay. You pour in tequila. It's lit on fire. So it kind of toasts the coffee grounds, and it burns off the alcohol really of the tequila. And then they go walk right over to the cow, and they milk the cow into the glass. So it is like the best latte, freshest, latte that you could ever have. And so I said, I made the bus driver turn around. We got to film that. And so they have me doing the whole thing and milking the cow, and it just was precious. And again, you can't plan that kind of stuff. You can't.
No, and that is the fun of food travel is you just pop up somewhere, you don't really know everything about it, and you're not trying to know everything about it.
No.
You're just trying to have a slice of an experience.
And you use your knowledge to try to draw out the more extreme knowledge of the people you're interviewing, right? So I love interviewing winemakers or chefs or, tequila masters because they know. And I know enough to be drawing that out, but I still have the wonder and the awe when I travel, and it gets caught on camera. Even with Check Please, I'm just in awe of some of these things, and I think that's translate.
Yeah. So this show, you said, aired in 2020, which was a good time because Check Please went through, of course, some transitions in 2020 because it is a show that relies on in person.
Absolutely.
Go to the restaurant. We have to come sit in the studio and have the conversation. And so this whole thing got upended. And I want to talk to you about how you all did like masterful pivoting through that time. But I have to say, even with the pivot you did, me and one of my really good friends who I would dine out with all the time, we would sit on the phone and watch, right? Other episodes. And it was like the faux version of going out to eat. We still were using the show to be part of that tradition we had of dining. So say a little bit about how y'all had to quickly turn the format everybody knew and loved to something that we had to just kind of navigate in the meantime until we could get our feet back under us.
Well, I'll tell you, when you say pivot, I was named one of the top pivot pros in a magazine. Because when the pandemic hit, we had just launched our first 6 shows of 100 Days, a travel show. No masks, nothing. We shut it all in 2019, right? We were outside. We were talking to people, giving hugs to people. And then the pandemic hit. My husband and I had gone to Hawaii to celebrate the launch of the show, came back, and it was full lockdown mode. We're like, oh my God.
Yikes.
And it was that moment where you go, okay, again, back to my lists and reassessment. Okay, what do I do for a living? I meet people in a TV studio and film. I meet people at their winery, and I film. I speak to groups of people, hundreds and hundreds of people all together in a room at one time. I was panicking, like, how am I going to translate this business to anything that's, that will pay money, right? What are you doing? Everybody was scrambling and panicking. And it turned out that I was able to flip my business, a lot of those speaking gigs, into, I had a wine partner, the wonderful Ferry Plaza wine merchant, and Debbie Zacharias. Mm-hmm. And I convinced all my corporate clients to do online tastings, and they would gather, they would invite people on their Zoom party call. We would send out party packs to everybody and we would get on and taste and talk. And again, I'm an entertainer, right? So it was fun to talk about wine, and they would still have interaction, and people loved those. I was so busy sitting in a chair. I'd have a morning session, an afternoon session, an evening session, it was crazy. And then what we had those conversations right away about Chuck Cleese. What are we going to do? We can't let this. Our momentum is growing so much, and we can't let the restaurants down. I mean, that's one of the tenets of Check Please. We call it the Check Please effect. Is it helps restaurants. Yes. I mean, we've had people say, you kept us in business. We got our liquor license with the amount of people you've exposed us to, and it's really I'm getting goosebumps because I love that part of the show, that we can help keep culinary, and restaurants and all things culinary alive, especially during that time. Mm-hmm. So we got on the phone, we were back and forth. We said, how can we get people? We can't get people in a room. So we devised it wasn't on Zoom, it was on a different platform, but it looked like Zoom. We shot in a shipping container at Marseille Restaurant out on Treasure Island. It's a wonderful restaurant on Treasure Island. It has been on the show, and they had this sort of converted shipping container as a special events room. Uh-huh. You were away from everybody, so we had our crew, just a small crew in there. Mm-hmm. Everyone wore masks except me, and we brought this idea of you pick one dish, and then we talk about that one dish. Everybody has it. Mm-hmm. And then we go to the restaurant, and we still were able to shoot. We just had, you saw a lot of masks. Mm-hmm. The chef was able to be unmasked. And so we pivoted very quickly because we didn't want to lose our momentum. Yeah. And we wanted to still, help people and be there for the restaurants and be there, have our wonderful guests. So it's a little different when you can't be with them in the same room. So it was a little different hosting that I had to do. Yeah. And we weren't talking about the whole experience, like service and all that thing. You have to modify. You had to pivot. Quickly. And luckily we did. And we were able to keep our show going through the pandemic and get back in the studio in 2021. Yeah.
And so good for you all that you did, because, with all the social loss that people were experiencing during that time, myself included, we all needed things like that we could still connect to. I'm a big watcher, and always have been, of PBS food and travel shows. Sure. So I have always felt there's something special about those shows, even different than the things that are like on, like Cooking Channel or, Food Network and those things, which they have elements of that too. But there's something about the food and travel shows on PBS that I think captured the explorative nature of food.
Absolutely. And again, that's I'm so glad you note that, because PBS is a trustworthy source, a nonpartisan, certainly there's corporate funders and all of that, but it's really about the content and the editorial purity of the content. And that's, I came from working with the New York Times and Microsoft. I was focused on, this isn't a paid gig, right? I mean, this isn't a platform for product or whatever. Yeah. And I understand what it costs to build a show. So, so that's the PBS mantra, is to really educate and to keep the content valuable and trustworthy. And I learned that firsthand again by doing 100 Days out of sort of, I was working with PBS but it was my show. Yeah. So you have standards to meet. You have, every show has to be approved, all of that. So, but I think during the pandemic, not only were we able to keep Check Please alive, which was beautiful and stressful, but obviously worthwhile to everybody who was able to watch. It brought us some sense of normalcy. And I think, and because I just launched 100 Days and we had, 12, 13 shows in the can, everybody loved watching them because it was like, oh my God, nobody's in a mask. They're actually touching each other. Oh my God. Yeah. So again, I've always been, I think the through line to my career is really just persistence and perseverance and creative thinking and, trying to find the magic moments wherever you can.
Yeah. You came to all of this before this whole thing of like creating a personal brand was a thing like it is now, right? And now at this point, anybody with a phone can create a show. What do you think makes someone good on camera?
You have to be able to talk to the camera just like you talk to the person in real life. Okay? You have to have this ability to look through the camera and to reach out and touch that viewer. And that's, I've done a lot of media training for people, chefs and winemakers and things like that, who have appearances. And so I think it's something that can be learned, but it's also something that's pretty innate. You know what I mean? Like for me, my most comfortable part of my profession is sitting in a chair and being in TV, talking to the camera, or being on the road and talking to the camera. The next is, that's why I love Check Please so much, is because I'm a gabber, I'm a connector, you've been on the show and are with me right now. I'm as the same on TV as I am in person.
Feel the same to me.
So, and that's why when I wrote my first book, Wine for Women, which you mentioned, it was really about, and at that time it was a whole different story. So if we have time, we'll talk about it. But when a woman read the book and came up to me, she said, "Oh my God, you're just like you are in the book. Like the words off the page, I can hear you saying them." And I thought that was the biggest compliment, because that means that my message, my focus, my approach of entertainment and still education comes through in every medium I'm on. And I think that's what makes people good on TV. Some of them there's bad people on TV too. Yeah. But I think it's their ability to just sort of look through the camera and talk to you like you're right with them.
Yeah. And also, especially now more than ever, you're talking about something that has become such this large conversation, across, people in general, which is reviewing food.
Yes.
Right. Andrew Zimmern shared a post. I want to say it was in the last week or so.
Met him numerous times. Great guy. Yeah.
Yeah. He shared an interesting post on Instagram about his thoughts on Yelp. He's not a fan.
No.
Like many people, I'm not a huge fan myself, but he stated that he didn't think it was helpful for the food and restaurant industry, and he called it crowdsourcing the mundane, and said he doesn't want to know the average person's thoughts on a restaurant. And I thought that was interesting because I understand where he's coming from.
I understand too.
But that is the entire premise of a show like Check Please Bay Area, is what does the average person think of the food? Do you think that perspective misses the mark on this whole conversation about democratizing who gets to talk about food?
No, I think in one way it's a great thing that we have so many voices now. Again, so much diversity in in the form of who's talking about food and bringing their opinions to the forefront and creating a following. I think with old guys like us who've been in it since, there were newspapers and you had editors and you were working at the New York Times and you could, the guardrails were there and are still there to create content that's true, that is factual. We used to have fact checkers, at the Times. And so that's the background I come from. And a lot of people who are stars that talk about it. I'm calling myself a star, but stars that talk about
You're
food
a star,
they come to it from being a chef. So that's their level of expertise. So you bring your level of expertise. And I think why our show has been on so long is because not only can people relate to each of the viewers, because we're getting their opinions out there, sitting in on at the table with us and really gaining I want to try that restaurant. Maybe because I like that person who recommended that restaurant, and they said good things about it. So I think what's missing today, and we can't put Genie back in the bottle, is those editorial guidelines, is those guardrails that say, but those guardrails also prevent views sometimes, and so people just do things to get
doing whatever
views, and so do I agree with all that? No, but that's not my place. You just, you do you and see what happens. And so it's opened up a lot of opportunity for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it's up to the viewer to decide who is worthy of their view.
Well, that's one thing I notice about Check Please, because in a way, in some degree, there's a similar conversation happening to the one you see on social media where someone is sharing their perspective or experience of a restaurant and then people are chiming in. But it's so much more civil on your side of the street because, on social media, people will go for each other's throats.
They will because it's anonymous, because they don't have to face that other person and talk to them. So of course they say obnoxious things, and you just have to learn how to process that and say, okay, that's not the voice I want to hear, or look at it as like my son who's grown up with social media. He's, 23, getting his master's in college and in film and television. But he's grown up that way, and he has people he really meticulously follows. He researches these people. He researches the facts. He does it the right way. And he likes to listen to a whole diversity of voices and to create his own opinion.
Yeah.
And I think, it's again, we can't put the genie back in the bottle in terms of how people are required to behave, if they're going to do a show or a YouTube show or whatever. And I think that for us at Check Please and PBS, we do have negative talk, on the show. I say, be honest. If it was, people are pretty respectful in terms of saying, the service was off the night we went, or we want your honest opinion, truly. But and it can create a little discussion at the table, which is great.
Discussion is great.
Fiery discussion is great. But when it veers into really negative territory and not useful territory, that's my job to cut that off and say, I understand what you're saying. We get it, and move on. Again, it's not trying to be all rosy and glowy, but there's only a few times I've had to stab the fork into a person's leg under the table.
Come on back. Come on back. Oh, I love that. So looking forward, right? When you think about the next generation of storytellers and diners, how do you see that impacting the future of the show? Because this will all inevitably change and evolve, and you have to meet diners where they are. What do you think a show like Check Please looks like 15 years from now?
It's interesting. I won't be the host 15 years from now, but
we want to keep you
for as long as I can.
Yes.
It's a really good question. And I think I was just watching something on TV about the use of AI and where to put AI in the whole scope of things right now. It's just at the beginning, like the internet was at the beginning, kind of when we started Sidewalk. And so it's really interesting because there's a level of fear about where we're going, because a lot of people in the restaurant business can be ruined by by negative Yelp reviews or really negative things. Just on the flip side, they can be, make lots of money as well if people, give them high praise. Yeah. Sometimes we don't know what's paid in there or what's not. We're figuring that out. Mm-hmm. And but I think, it's good. It's very good to hear all those new voices and all those, regular people talking up. But again, I go back to, on our show, we have guardrails to prevent that sort of bashing that you get on the internet. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, the bashing is there have been plenty of Check Please restaurants that I've gone to visit that I'm like, I don't think that was so good, and we want people's honest opinion, but we don't let them spiral down into that negativity that you get when you're anonymously online. Yes. And you can say whatever you want. And it's up to the viewer to learn how to filter and to learn how to trust what they're reading and that person that they're watching.
Yeah. Check Please will not be devolving into a social media model 15 years from now.
But, we've really grown in terms of our social media following, in terms of I want to say that close to the majority of people are watching us on YouTube and online. So, it's, you're going to wonder what that TV is for on the wall, right?
What was that thing? Yeah.
What was that thing?
Yeah. You mentioned AI. That's interesting. There will be no robots hosting in years to come.
Yeah. They are already writing wine reviews, though,
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. That's unfortunate.
It's unfortunate because it's taking other people's opinion and synthesizing them into one opinion. So
yeah. Mm-hmm. Who wants a resynthesized opinion? Mm-hmm. I don't.
Yep, a robot tasting note.
Okay. I want to ask you this because you've been really open about your journey in health and wellness. You have shared publicly that you are a survivor of colon cancer.
Correct.
And one of the things you shared very openly about that was the road to even being diagnosed, because you have been misdiagnosed for so long and had to really... I was frustrated listening to the story because even on a small scale, you go to the doctor for one thing, they're persistent and insistent about going down a different road. And if you are not there to keep pushing the door and pushing the door and pushing the door, they'll be treating you for things that have nothing to do with what's going on. So I would love for you to share a bit about your journey in coming to the diagnosis. And you so positively have spoken about how you're framing, you're relating to the reality of what it is, how you feel that has been so impactful in you being able to say you have survived it.
Well, I survived and thriving. Mm-hmm. It's you can't... when you have a stage 4 diagnosis, which is by the time I was misdiagnosed, it had become stage 4.
Wow.
You live with that. And so I'm in my 6th year of living with that. And I only started talking really in depth about it pretty recently because I felt it was so, so, so important to expose people who listen to me and watch me, expose them to the reality of not only our healthcare system and how to advocate for yourself and how important that is. That's my main message. The other is that you can still live a very full life, no matter if you have health issues or financial issues or, relationship issues. You've got to find a way to get up every day and say, thank you, I'm here. Mm-hmm. Thank you, let me enjoy this moment. Let me enjoy this day. And so I knew I was quiet about the first 3 or 4 years because I couldn't expend any other energy on anybody else, right? Mm-hmm. I was going through lots of treatment, surgeries, radiation, chemo, etc. And still traveling, still shooting my show, still working, still living. And so... it was really, it's really about how you, as you said, frame everything. But so I was just trying to keep my life together and keep it moving forward. And I didn't have bandwidth to deal with people, which is what you do once you put yourself out there online. Mm-hmm. And most of my, interaction with the public on social media and things like that are about my work, not about me personally. Yeah. So let me start at the beginning quickly when you said the misdiagnosis. Sad to say, after living this for, more than 6 years, is I am not the only one. It is quite common to be misdiagnosed. So I can give, I'm not doctor bashing or that, although our healthcare system is a mess. I can attest to that. And but my sister, who passed away from cancer 12 years ago, was misdiagnosed until it was stage 4. I have other friends and relatives who have been misdiagnosed. You just don't think it's going to happen to you. You think you're smart enough, you know enough. I've lived this with my sister. I know. I started having digestive issues in 2018, and I had a colonoscopy in 2016, 2 years later. Okay. So everything was fine when I did my colonoscopy. No worries. So I'm complaining digestively of just kind of bloating and gas and those sorts of things. And, going in to see the gastroenterologist, it's just nothing. If you got to eat. Well,
dietary changes.
Yeah, it was dietary changes, blah, blah, blah. They didn't, and there were multiple doctors involved in this. And again, if I detailed every single mistake and miss that I went through, it would take well over an hour. So they were saying dietary changes from gluten-free to dairy-free to FODMAP, this diet that you react to high FODMAP foods, like apples and onions and cauliflower and things like that. So I did a low FODMAP diet. I've done all the things the doctors were telling me, right? And no real relief. And I kept getting just that general sense of bloating. And then I, said, this is getting worse. But we were filming, we were working, in between everything, going to see another doctor. Then the next besides the bloating, the next real symptom for me, and people have asked me a lot about symptoms, and mine were not standard. And I'm going to talk about how many young people are dying from colon cancer right now with different symptoms than what they were traditionally looking for. And I experienced that. So I felt like my lungs were the problem. I've had a history of sinus infections and things like that. And something I thought, I was like, I can't breathe. And, I'd be running around busy, but it was not normal. And my lungs, I tell my husband, they feel like Rice Krispie cookies, snap, crackle, pop when I breathe in. It was the weirdest thing. Went through this is after multiple doctors and multiple trying to get explanations, but nobody even brought up the idea of colon cancer because I had, had a clean colonoscopy a mere few years before. And they always say it's a slow-going cancer. Not true. Not true anymore. And so, they did a whole lung workup. And then COVID hit. And I passed the lung workup, completely clear. Oh, it's not your lungs. And I'm like, oh, man, what is this? And anyway, so COVID hits, nobody would see you. I had to change. My doctor my last doctor put me on, gastroenterologist put me on something called, he said, you have SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, very common. Put me on an antibiotic and promptly retired. And I didn't know what to do with this antibiotic. I had no one to call, and it was COVID. And should I go off it? Should I go on? Anyway, it was a nightmare trying to find a new person. They're looking at you over Zoom. Cannot diagnose colon cancer over Zoom. No. Doesn't work. They even took a CT of me and of my abdomen. The tumor was clearly there in the sigmoid colon, which is where it curves around. And they missed it. So I'm now in nowhere land because it's COVID. And I finally get somebody to give me a colonoscopy. And that was March of 2021. So this is now a 3-year journey, right? Of me noticing symptoms, things. I was not having, blood in my stool and all those things that are kind of common. Classic symptoms.
Okay.
And I came out of the colonoscopy and the doctor said, you have a tumor and I believe it's cancer and you're going to be at the oncologist tomorrow and in surgery next week to remove a portion of your colon. And that's when, once that happened, then they found it had metastasized and I was in the stage 4 category. And through miraculous doctors and a team that I learned so quickly that the teams that I have now I've built. I want people to understand when you're going through medical journeys, you are the boss.
Yes.
It's up to me. It's not up to the doctor. We all think it's up to the doctor. When I was going through this whole thing, I thought it was up to the doctor. Oh, they're saying this, I'll do this. They're saying this, I'll do this. They're guessing sometimes. They're So you have to take responsibility for your own health. And you have to push to get the right doctors and push. When I said perseverance in my career and doors shut, well, you got to find those other ones that'll open. I don't accept no. I don't accept no. So, you give me that no answer, I go, I'm going to find somebody else. Okay, there's a way around this. We're going to figure this out. And I had wonderful care. I've had wonderful care. I've had terrible care. So, but again, I've made it 6 years living life fully every day because I quickly embraced, after the debacle of being misdiagnosed for so long, that I was the boss. And that it was up to me to figure out what was the latest going on in my cancer. What was the, where do they think things come from? And what can we do about that? And who are the best team? And who do I connect with? So I've left doctors, I've found doctors, I've put together teams at Stanford, at UCSF. So it's up to you to create your own team. And that's what I wanted to get across and why I've come so recently to talk about it, because that's the important thing, especially in the healthcare system today. And also because so many young people are getting colon cancer, and there's always been a stigma around colon cancer. You know what? Talk about your poop. Look at your poop. Pay attention to your poop, and your anything that seems off. And one of the early symptoms of me was I kept telling the doctor, I feel really heavy. Like, not weight heavy, but just like there's weights on my body. Like, I'm really heavy. Well, what can they do with that? I don't blame them for missing that, right? But now colon cancer has just become the #1 cancer killer of men and women under 50. And not just here.
I didn't know that stat.
Absolutely. That is a brand new stat. And that just shows cancer deaths are decreasing overall, but colon cancer deaths are increasing because of all the young people at 30, people at 35, are dying of stage 4 colon cancer because it mimics so many other things. Doctors have not been focused on it. They thought, oh, it's an old person's disease, right?
Yeah.
No. And the symptoms, when you get it at a younger age, are very different in many cases than the standard colon cancer treatment. And nobody even recommended a Cologuard to me. I mean, they were those sort of early diagnostic
detection
tests.
Yeah.
And so thank God they're finally paying attention to it. I've been involved with the V Foundation, a fantastic organization that donates money to cancer research, Colon Cancer Alliance. It is so important to talk about it and to share my experience, because I knew that at some point I would be ready to share it so that I could help other people.
Yeah.
And I have gotten such an incredible response to just, getting out there and talking about this. And I've got so much more. But what I want to talk about in the future with this journey that I'm on is that part of it that is what I call thriving. I've coined the term, I'm the can in cancer, right?
Okay, then.
Right?
Yes.
The can in cancer.
I love that.
And I can do this. What can we do? It's not about what you cannot do. It's about what you can do. And so I want to focus on that thrivership piece, because I am a very positive person, as you can tell. I grew up, they called me Sunshine. That was my nickname. And I always look at the glass half full. And so I wake up every day and say, thank you. Look at this. I get to look out and see the beautiful day. I don't care if it's raining or whatever. And when my sister passed away of cancer, she was always very funny and positive as well. And she looked at me and she said, every day she'd get up, it's a good day. I get to look at the flowers and not the roots.
Wow.
Right there. That's a good day.
I know that's right.
And so that's what I want to focus on, is how I power through it. What is my mindset? My mind, is the one that can choose happiness, can choose your attitude. You can choose that attitude of gratitude, to be thankful for what you have instead of worrying about what you don't have. Yeah. To be thankful for that moment, that glimmer that I was talking about when I was filming, right? That's something that I have looked for my whole life. And to appreciate the day right now, to appreciate the moment. We get mired in past regrets and past anger. And I lived through that. How could the doctors miss this for so long and you're angry? You have to let that go. That's past. Can't change it. Go. You accept. And then with that acceptance comes, okay, I move forward. How? And then we get ourselves, again, mired in the future worries. Well, what if we go down the what if spiral? Yeah, what if? What if it all works out? What if you've got to change that mindset and focus on today? And and that's what I will be focusing on as I tell my story and share my story, in the coming years, is how I thrive.
How you got through it.
And again, it can apply to any situation. Everybody's got something. Trust me, everybody's got something that they can, flip into a more positive state.
Yeah.
And I learned at a very young age, as I had mentioned to you, and being positive from birth, I think just the way you're born. My father passed away at 46 years old of a heart attack. He was an airline pilot. He left one day to go on a flight. He didn't come home the next day. And my mother was left at 40 with 5 kids, 10, 12, 15, 17, 19. And I learned very early on that you can walk out of the house and not come back tomorrow. And so I chose, even at that young age, every day, you got to live today because you don't know what's around the corner. And that has shaped my life. And that has prepared me for this journey. And that's what I hope to share with people is to, we always say the present is the gift. And it truly is.
Yeah. I love this. Thank you so much for sharing that. I have to share with you that I have my first colonoscopy scheduled for next month. And I also did not feel, I don't have any symptoms. I don't feel I need anything. But, after talking with my medical team, and then it seems like right after I scheduled that, I started seeing you talking about it. And I felt so good about getting in front of, what could be, and hopefully, it's nothing.
It's
but
nothing.
Just as a preventative measure to say that you've checked. And even if you have to check again, I think that is what I would love for people to take away from what you just shared is, sometimes you do have to double back. Sometimes it's checking things that came up clear before, and that you advocated for yourself. But not just that, what you shared about your approach and your attitude to it. We are so glad you did that and so glad that you are here.
Yeah, me too.
I want to give you your flowers for a moment because I will tell you that I'm not from the Bay Area originally. I'm coming up on my 12th year here. I moved here. I'm originally born and raised in the Bronx, lived in Atlanta for just over a decade, and then have been here in the Bay for almost 12 years now. And when I moved here, I hated it. Despite loving it now, I hated it. Yeah. And it was like, those first 2 years were just like such an unhappy time for me because I just really did not want to be living in California. And one of the first things that started to create a routine and connect me to the experience of being out and about in the community and engaging was Check Please Bay Area.
Oh, that warms my heart.
Yeah, it was one of the things that really made me start to look at the place I was as a place to explore. And now fast forward these years later, working in food media and spending all my time in restaurants and that being something that I get so much joy out of. I don't know that I would have come to this as what I'm doing if not for things in part like watching you and, even coming and being able to be a part of that show. So thank you so much for what you've done. I don't think maybe you realize, or maybe you do, just how foundational you've been to so many people here.
Isn't that wonderful? I mean, you bring tears to my eyes. It makes it so worth it to me when I hear personal stories of how Check Please has resonated with them over their lives. And how does a food TV show do that? I think it does it because we're human and we're spending this time talking about something we love and interacting and showing off that beautiful product that can come from people getting together and talking and sharing real things. Yeah. And even when I was going through the worst of my treatments, I would show up. I didn't miss a show. I did not miss a show. Now, again, that's part of my wonderful, wonderful team that I'm involved with at KQED. But, and great makeup and lighting. But, I didn't want to miss that experience. I didn't want to be the one who was out because I love getting in that at that table on that set, and I love everybody I work with, and I just love the feeling of being on that set. You've been there, and it's just such fun, and it's such life affirming, I think, for me. So to hear it resonate so much with you is really beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you to, the team that helps bring that experience together. I really do want to give a shout out to, she's now my friend. I met her through the process of getting on the show, Cecilia Phillips.
Isn't she great?
She was on the podcast back in season 5 because she's someone in the food media space that I really do look up to. And she kind of helped put you and I in contact for this to happen today. So shout out to Cecilia. Thank you so much, friend. And thank you for inviting me to your beautiful home to talk to you today.
I am so honored. Honestly, I really am. And anything we can do to get the message out about Check Please, of course, which which we want to keep going, as you said, another decade, 2 decades, right?
Yes.
The concept of Check Please. It is really one of the bright spots in my life, and has been for a long time, and especially has been during this journey. And for me to be able to share, as I'm beginning my journey of sharing my story to help others, and thank you for going to arrange your colonoscopy, and to tell people it's gratitude, it's your attitude, it's your physical ability to get out and move your body, and to not let an illness or other difficulties in your life define you. You've got the power in your brain, in your heart, in your community, and the strength to live through it and to get through it. And that's really what I want to share with people is, I'm the can in cancer, and everybody can be the can in life.
Mic drop. Tell people where they can keep up with all the amazing things you have going on.
All my social media is at Leslie Sbrocco. Website, lesliesbrocco.com, and also 100 Days, Drinks, Dishes, and Destinations.com, along a mouthful of words, but we'll be back in production on that show. And you can find it all, though, at lesliesbrocco.com.
Okay. I will make sure to share that out with the show notes. If you want to keep up with me in between episodes, you can find me at kayinthebay.com or on Instagram at heykayinthebay. That has been this week's episode of the As Told By podcast. I've loved this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'll see y'all on the next one.